Good evening YouTube and welcome back to the channel. My name's James Stone and today you join me on part 3 of Project S2000. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you check out obviously the intro video and the videos before this, which feature the airbox change that I made and the first attempts at chopping all the rust out the arches, which was pretty messy. I was expecting rust, but as we'll detail in this video, I unfortunately have found a lot more. But I have organised the videos in the playlist, so if you do want to stop this now, watch it from the beginning. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense on where the project's going currently. So with the weather, work, Brexit, COVID, just everything the past couple of weeks or even months has just slowed right down. I just seem to be busier than ever. So the S2000 unfortunately has just been sitting outside waiting for some TLC. So thankfully on today's video, I can actually show you some progress and I'm really happy with how the car's starting to come together now. It's really sort of how I visioned it back when I picked it up and how I wanted it to look. So stay tuned, get yourself comfy and we'll go through all the updates in this episode. So as I detailed in the last video, the right hand arch was pretty bad. It was really blistered on the outside, so I knew it was going to be rotten on the inside. And I cut all that out and I had to cut a lot more out on the inner skin than I actually thought I would. So that obviously all needed to be finished. Went over to the passenger side, which wasn't as bad. The outer skin was okay. It had a little bit of bubbling, a little bit of blistering. But the inner arch again was just as bad. So I took the 4-inch grinder, cut through the outer skin, and here again I can overlay a clip of just how much that rust really eats into this. Now this was a Japanese car, JDM S2000, so maybe not as much S2000s in the UK, obviously get a lot more underseal than the Japanese ones. Maybe this one didn't have it done when it was imported into the UK, who knows. But unfortunately, it has started to eat into a lot of the metalwork. It's not the worst I've seen looking on the Owners Club, but it's certainly present, and that did all need to be chopped out, unfortunately. So as I mentioned in the last video, to repair this properly, you could easily be looking at £1,500 plus to get the arches sorted out. From what I read online, to buy a new arch or rear quarter, which is all one piece from Honda, is about £1,000 a side. So this car, as I've said, and I'll say it again, is never going to be a beauty queen, unfortunately. So that was certainly not an option or a budget I wanted to spend because the rest of the car's not pristine. So it didn't, for me, make sense to try and make it look as beautiful as possible. Yes, maybe in 10, 20 years time, if I've still got it, I'll regret that because it could be worth an absolute fortune. Proper NA, 2 litre, high revving, just to be a thing of the past. But we're here right now. This is the build we're going ahead with. I'm not looking to destroy it, but obviously I'm not also looking to plough absolute thousands in it because it isn't a low mileage mint car. So with the arches all rattle canned up in the garage, everything got fitted. I riveted them all in with the new rivet gun. And to be honest with you, for what the cost of getting that done, I mean, it was like £50 for a set of those arches. They were sort of used, new, never fitted. Couple of rattle cans, it's sort of a satin black that I've gone with. I was really happy with the look of the car, and like I say, fit from afar, but far from fit, I think is going to go with this one. But overall, it's sort of fitting that like track slag look that I've always planned to have with the car. So yeah, really chuffed with how the arches come out, and because I've cut it all out, obviously we shouldn't hopefully have any more rust. Don't plan to drive the car in the wet, don't plan to use the car in the winter when it's snow and salt on the road. So hopefully it doesn't get any worse. To try and prevent that even more, I wire wheeled all inside the arches, undersealed it all in there, and like I say, because of where the subframe and the wishbones are, I couldn't get to absolutely everything at this stage, and I just wanted to see how it looked, because to be honest with you, I've never had to underseal a car before. I've never had a car that I think, do you know what, this could probably do with a bit of love to make sure this doesn't happen. The Clio may go down that route now, having seen how it is in that one. Nice and easy to apply just with a paintbrush, and it's dried in a really nice finish. And I've done it all up to where I've cut through the arches as well on top of the primer, just to give it the best chance if I did get caught out in the rain or just general moisture in the air from corroding that any further. So yeah, really happy with how that's sort of come together now. A few hours spent treating that up, and I'll do the same for the front arches as well when it all comes apart. So probably the biggest difference, other than obviously a good clean and getting those arches on, is the new wheels. So I went again a used set. I wasn't really in the market for a pristine example, so 4 used Rota grids with some Dunlop. I think they were like a sport Sport Max or something. The rears have got about 3 or 4 mil on them. Fronts look pretty much new. The mileage I cover, it's not going to need changing anytime soon. So slightly wider stance. I can't remember what they were. I think they were 245 on the back. So a little bit wider on the rear, a little bit wider on the front. Proper tyre, because I had a mix match on the set that were on there. And not going to need spacers now. If you can see in that intro, they are lovely in the arches. Maybe at a push 5mm on the rear, but you don't get any more on the front without rubbing issues. But overall, it's really sort of made the car really aggressive and just finish it off. And like I say, it's something I wanted to do, the black on black, makes it look a bit more aggressive, and yeah, really chuffed, and just can't wait to get it all finished now and see how it's going to look when it's done. One of the issues that I did have, and I've seen this before and I've had it when I had my Civic Type R, is when you run over a wheel like that where it's quite deep dished, unfortunately the standard wheel nuts don't work as well, especially the locking wheel nuts. So you run like an internal, I think my ones I had on the Civic were like an Allen key, like an 8mm thread, so that the Allen key goes into the middle of the wheel nut so that you don't scratch the outside. But the nuts fitted, it was just the locking wheel nut that was an issue. So I just took a grinder to skim the outer skin off. It's not structurally compromised. I can still torque the wheels up without any issues, but it just gave me that clearance to make sure that I wasn't scuffing the wheels every time I was undoing the locking wheel nut and doing it up. So probably the most ghetto part of the build so far. And now I do have to stress, do not do this at home. Do not do it if you plan to drive the car on the road. So the issue is the wheels were on. I really wanted to see how it was going to sit with the coilovers. Now, the dampers were absolutely shot. Both of the rears turned out to be leaking. That explains the odd loose feeling it had in the rear end that I thought was bushes originally. And the springs were all corroded. So I was like, well, it's all coming out for the underseal. It's going to be a couple of months until the coilovers come on, probably sort of April, May time before I actually get around to get into that stage of the build once all the bushes are done. And I thought, I'm going to take the springs out and chop the springs. So this is purely for driveway stance. Some could say, what was the point? But I thought for half an hour, I can take the old springs out. I've got it up in the air, chop the springs, put them back in, and then obviously I can see how it looks. So that's how I've got the good look on the driveway without coilovers. But again, I must stress, you should never use this on the road. The springs are too short now. If the car got air, the spring wouldn't unfortunately work correctly. It become unseated. They're progressively wound, which means you should not be chopping them down. They're not like the old style springs, but just for sitting on the driveway. All that stuff's going in the bin. I know the standard springs and dampers are worth good money in good order, but springs were cracked, dampers leaking. I was like, you know what? Let's just see how it looks on the driveway for the next couple of months. I'll take an hour of my time, chopped them, put it all back together. And like I said, that's what it looks like. It's on lowering springs or coilovers at the moment, but I won't be driving it on the road anywhere. So it was then on to removing the soft top. So as I mentioned in the last video, the hard top had been sold, soft top was leaking. I'd bought that temporary cover, like frost cap for it, which has worked really well. It's kept the car nice and dry, but it was time to get rid of the soft top. And all that motor, it was ready to take the plunge to be that sort of open top two-seater racer that I planned from the beginning. So started stripping everything apart in the car. Toolkit all came out, spare wheel came out. Again, good chunk of weight coming out of the car. And as I lifted the toolkit out, I could clearly see the driveway through there. So a little bit more rust again than I expected. I had a quick Google into this last night, and what I've seen people do, if you don't need the toolkit on there again, which I'm not going to be requiring, is you can actually cut the frame out below the box section which holds the bottom of the toolkit that's all rusted, and put a plate in the top. So I've seen 2 people do this. Again, it's not compromising from what I can see the chassis strength, because the crash bars and all the rail is still in the back. You're not tampering with that. It's just that well that's rotted out, and I'll just put a flat plate in there. And fingers crossed, I'd say that saves a bit of weight as well. So that's going to be the plan for the back, because with rust, once it's in, you can't save it. You've got to chop it out. It's only going to get worse. So again, a little bit disappointing to see, but we're at that stage now where everything's starting to corrode. So it's just going to be one of those things that I need to address before it obviously goes through for MOT. So I found a guide online for removing the soft top. I thought, you know what, why struggle? Normally I'll just have a go with things, but I thought there is trims absolutely everywhere here. I'm sure there's bolts hidden all over the place, and it's from the S2K forum. Guy had put a really nice little guide together for swapping over a roof. Obviously I only needed the first half because mine was just going to go in the bin. It was absolutely destroyed from those who saw the first video when we lifted it up with Matt. And it was just holes everywhere. The screen was all duct taped together. Absolute mess. And it was really now letting the car down. So took all the seats out, started getting into the car. So they said straddle the tunnel, sitting in the back, trying to get my head between the screen. And I thought, hang on a second, I'm not keeping the roof. So out came the Stanley knife and I literally just cut it all open. It was all shredded and ripped and going in the bin anyway. I thought, I don't need to struggle doing this. I will just cut the old roof out. And like I said, that then just gave me the access to all the nuts and bolts that I needed to undo to get the soft top out of the car. So at this stage, with the soft top out, the frame out of the car, which weighed an absolute ton, I was genuinely surprised for how heavy that kit is that's in there, especially with all the motors, the frame, the brackets, everything that runs the soft top. Finally got it all out. All the trims came out without breaking anything. At this point, I sort of stood back, filmed it and was like, the car is looking a mess. And I text Matt and said, look, this is where I'm at. And even he was like, you've made a mess, a proper mess pulling all that out. But I said, fear not, the trims will be going back in. I'm not going to leave it like that. It's just to gain access. And like I say, it really gives you a good idea of how much weight is in that car because you can just see bracing everywhere. And like I say, the soft top frame, the soft top motors. Generally going to be excited to see what we can get the weight of the car down. I mean, by the time I'm finished, could I remove 100, 150 kilos from the car? We shall see, but obviously stay tuned for the video because we will be putting it on the scales once everything's been removed. So with all the soft top removed, I decided it was time to give everything a good hoover. I was still finding sand absolutely everywhere. As we said in the intro, the car was in Weymouth. Previous owner had been using it as a run around, taking his dog to the beach, and every panel I removed had sand or something in it. Even down the side of the soft top, packs of chewing gums, lighters. There was even a lighter for what you use at like barbecues or hobs. I was like, what on earth? How on earth does this stuff fall down here? But obviously just over the years, 21 odd years of use, it was just unfortunately looking a bit tired. And thankfully, good old Henry the Hoover came out and I managed to bring the carpets up pretty well. And I'll overlay a comparison here of where I did the passenger side and then obviously went back over to the driver's side to finish that off as well. And started putting all the plastic trims back in, and something that I wasn't sure was going to work is once the soft top was out, was I going to be left with just a great amount of mess, like all the structural work where the soft top used to go? Happy to report, not really. I've got a few bits on the side that are exposed, but all the trim panels go back in and it actually finishes it off. You can leave it like that. It doesn't look broken. It doesn't look torn apart. And I was really happy to see. Obviously now seats are out. So passenger seats actually sold. That went last week. Gentleman took it abroad to put in a left-hand drive car. He reckoned you could switch it all over because his driver's seat on a left-hand drive car was destroyed. So it was like, this is the cheapest option. And then I'm just left with the driver's seat, which is all torn, that I can still move the car around with until we get those new seats fitted. Something that I did discover when I was taking it all apart is something has gone wrong with the rear right tail loom. Someone's cut the loom, added what I can only describe as looks like a bit of twin and earth in there, black twin and earth cable, which you'd find in a house, and it runs down to the front of the engine bay. So something's obviously shorted or damaged and someone's just done a ghetto fix. So that's going to need to be looked at because it just looks nasty, frankly. But I will get that addressed as well. Again, the car keeps on giving with little surprises, but with the current lockdown outside and COVID, weather seems to be getting better. We had some nice weather Saturday and Monday. Sunday, Monday, which made it bearable to be outside. A little bit cold Saturday, but it's nice to just be able to tinker outside in 10-degree weather rather than the snow that we've had previously. Final two things to discuss. Well, everything went back together. Like I say, put the car down. It looked really good. Ran out of daylight, unfortunately, on Monday. I've had some annual leave left over, so it gave me a Monday to play with the car. And something that I wanted to get done for this video, but I didn't, is if you saw the airbox video where I modified the standard airbox, I liked the idea with the lid being cut open. Heat shield was being a bit fiddly to fit and secure. It was adding weight back in if I was going to brace it correctly. And then I remember back to one of my Mark II Clios where I'd put a knacker duct on the bonnet and it vented straight into the airbox. And I was like, this is doable on the S2000. This shouldn't be a problem because the airbox now runs right up to the bonnet. I can make a decent sized cut in the bonnet, fit a nice knacker duct, and it'll be a lot like the Tegra intake I had on my EP3 Type R, and that thing was loud coming out of the bonnet. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to commit. So I ended up buying a large knacker duct off eBay. I think it was like £15 for a fiberglass one. So I've made a template. That'll all be going in the next video. And to be honest with you, I think that's as best as I'm going to be able to do with making that VTEC sing. And with that in place now, I haven't got the issue of heat coming off the radiator, no solid airflow from the front, because this will literally pick straight off the front of the bonnet and force it into the airbox. So I need to measure the dimensions of this knacker duct to see if it's the same size as the standard airbox opening, which means I could cover the standard airbox opening, or if I'm going to need to run still some sort of ducting from that front air feed on the standard airbox down to the lower grille. But yeah, really starting to take shape now. Getting excited for it because it's starting to come together and it feels and looks like a proper bit of kit. Now all the inside's cleaned up, the soft top's all in the bin, the wheels are on, it's lowered, again in a bit of a piping ghetto way. That's not great, but just for the driveway, that's perfect. The only issue I have run into is that frozen cap cover that I put over the car when the soft top was on there to stop the leaks. Is now there's no roof frame in there. It's actually turning into a bit of like a pond liner. So gonna need to get that garage finished pretty soon. But overall, really happy with how it's coming together. Like I say, next video, still got to do the rocker cover repaint, which I've got all the wrinkle paint for, that's turned up. Got to do the valve adjustments. All the fluids have got to be changed. The car is in desperate need of a good clean, good machine polish like I did on the rear quarter previously, just to see how the paint was. Get some tyre shine on there because the rubber on the tyres looks almost brown where they've been stored. So I think once you see it in the next video, it'll be like, yeah, this is really starting to look the part. Well, at least I think so anyway. So hopefully you're enjoying the series. Like I say, we've got the other builds going on. The E46 M3 is now about 9 weeks into waiting for the Öhlins coilovers. I dread to think if I'm going to be stung with a load of import tax now we've left the EU. That will obviously be hopefully a video in the coming weeks if they all arrive in time. But plenty more to come. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you subscribe, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Until next time.